Washington State. And of course, the overblown pufferfish and rat ruling over California, Gavin Newsom. Look at their criminal rule over land once free. I say I am an American and I am a free man. No government body rules over me and my family. No government head can order me to abandon my business, my job, order me to give up my God-forgiven right to live free and unmolested by the jackboot and heavy hand of the government gone mad with power over true law does not give. We will never grant. Even if there was a pandemic, one that was dangerous and spreading uncontrolled, no government body has the power to destroy our way of life and by their order. This is not some third world nation ruled over by greed and evil-soaked strongmen. This is a land of cowards and of human sheep who crawl before the criminal cartels of control and unlawful commands. Or I'll ask all of you, is it? What have we become? On this first day of the new year, 2021, I ask you, the people, the patriots of this once great nation, a nation we could return to the land of the free. If only we could return her to the land of the free. I ask in a troubled voice, in a worried soul, who are we as Americans? January 1st, 2021. Are we the new age, new world order serfs, lemming in locksteps who give our God-given freedom or liberty, a pursuit of happiness, unmolested by government, terror, and tyranny? Are we the Americans of our time, right now, this day? Are we going to simply bow and give up what was once meant to be American? Will we crawl, pathetic, and submit again and again our freedoms and take our public servants to become masters? The time has come and we must decide. A stolen presidential election and a dictator rule across many states in our nation, once free, or is a restoration of our American nation to the land of the free and the home of the brave. I vote for the second declaration of the independence against the criminal cartel now occupying the Oregon State Capitol.
USA! USA! So what are they going to do about it, really, though? That's the question.
Guys, listen up.
What are they going to do about it?
So these brown shirts that are standing here right now...
Oh, okay, brown shirts. Okay.
You can look in their eyes. Some of them love hurting us.
Dems are the real brown shirts. No.
The fact that they have to stand against us because they'd rather be standing with us. So let's not be too hateful towards them. Anybody else wants to speak? Now's your chance.
Okay, everybody. What we have here is a franchise of McDonald's, the corporation of the United States. It was taken away from us in 1872. And if you guys want to get your rights back and come back to the law of the land and soil, join the Oregon Assembly. And you'll have your natural rights back. Right now,
what is he fucking blathering about?
They took away our rights.
Anyway, so let's dispense with that boomerness right now. I wanted to talk about, for anybody out there watching, I wanted to talk about a few things. I noticed that Kyle Rittenhouse got charged with some new shit. They're trying to tack new charges on this kid. They're trying to charge him with violating curfew, which is just so fucking ridiculous. They're trying to fucking scramble for anything they can to whack this kid who just defended themselves. We all know that. But that kind of shit doesn't seem to really fucking matter. What up, you guys? Yeah, follow me on DLive if you can, dlive.tv/Duerstream. It's a way less censorious platform. Let me know if you can hear me well, if my microphone's coming through well. I'm assuming it is. Sometimes it's iffy, though. But yeah, Kyle Rittenhouse, 17, is accused of killing 2 people and injuring a third person during protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin this summer. Rittenhouse was charged in August with multiple counts, including reckless and intentional homicide, endangerment, and being a minor in possession of a firearm. That, I guess, if that's... I mean, that's literally the only thing that's true about the situation, is that he was a minor. The across state lines, the reckless and intentional homicide, that's bullshit. Endangerment, bullshit. Yeah, it's all clearly self-defense. We all know that. Fuck these people, man. They're scrambling. They're scrambling for anything. It's really fucking not, you know. Prosecutors allege that Rittenhouse, who is white, wow, of course they pepper that in. At one point I would have been, asking you why, but I think we know why they're doing that. Left his home in Antioch and traveled to Kenosha after learning of a call for militia to protect businesses in that city on August 25th. In that city on August 25th. Kenosha was in the throes of several nights of chaotic street demonstrations after a white officer shot Jacob Blake, who is black, in the back, leaving Blake paralyzed. Oh my gosh. So to your average soy boy shitlib, this is really telling. This fucking paragraph right here. This is what shitlibs look for, Rittenhouse, who's white, left his home in Antioch, so this is the across state lines bullshit. But the gun was there. He didn't bring the gun across state lines. We already know that. Blah, blah, blah. But the fact that he's white matters, and the fact that it's... the fact that there have been riots and terrorism now, chaotic street demonstrations after a, again, white officer shot Jacob Blake, who is black, in the back. No, see, they leave out the fact that he pulled a knife. They also leave out the fact that he's a rapist who was violating parole or whatever it was, or violating a restraining order or something like that, and that he was fighting with cops, and he went for a knife. They leave all those pertinent details out, of course. Rittenhouse opened fire with an assault style rifle during the protest that night, killing Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber, and wounding Gage Grosskreutz. Oi, Gewalt. Rittenhouse has argued he fired in self-defense, right? And the video that they, of course, leave out. They leave out the video. The video would show that he also acted in self-defense. Supporters of the Black Lives Matter movement have painted Rittenhouse as a trigger-happy white supremacist. Conservatives upset over property destruction during recent protests. Holy shit, dude. just in another episode of, like, all progressives ever do is lie, just by omission. Okay, yeah, we're angry simply over property destruction, and as if property destruction isn't a big deal, I guess, Portrayed him as a patriot who was exercising his right to bear arms during the unrest. Yeah, legal offense. Donate to his legal offense fund if you haven't. Just absurd. Just very fucking absurd, man. And I think we have a video about the situation as well.
Caught on a small Zoom screen with his face concealed behind a mask, but accused Kenosha killer Kyle Rittenhouse appeared before a judge for the first time since bonding out of jail with the help of donations last month.
Your Honor, for the purposes of this hearing, I will stipulate that my client is seated wearing a blue shirt. He just pulled his mask down. He is Kyle Rittenhouse.
Seated behind his attorney, the 17-year-old never said a word as his lawyer tried unsuccessfully to convince the court to toss out 2 of the 6 charges against Rittenhouse, including possession of a dangerous weapon by a minor.
What the government is trying to seek is an impingement of my client's Second Amendment rights, which is not covered by this statute.
There's no dispute in this case that Kyle Rittenhouse armed himself with an AR-15 on August 25th, 2020, at the age of 17 years old. That's it. It's that simple. This is exactly why we have this law. Because a teenager in this case killed 2 people and shot a third.
Kenosha County
child molesting arsonists who were attacking him, you fucking smarmy lizard person.
Prosecutors brought in a detective handling Rittenhouse's investigation investigation. The 17-year-old is charged with shooting and killing 2 protesters during violent unrest following the police shooting of Jacob Blake in August.
Kyle Rittenhouse was the shooter in that incident. He then fled that scene northbound on Sheridan Road.
Reviewing a series of still photos of the scene, Rittenhouse's attorney is trying to prove the teenager fired
What an obnoxious
in
voice.
self-defense.
In the video, before my client is knocked to the ground by the strike to the head,
Yep.
you hear numerous individuals yelling, "Kill him, get him, cranium him." Correct?
Yep.
Correct.
A judge ruled the state presented enough evidence to continue prosecuting Kyle Rittenhouse and that his defense team will have to make an argument for self-defense before a jury. He'll next be in court on January 5th.
God help him. See, the system's completely fucked. You don't have a right to defend yourself. Wait, Kyle, what is this now? Hold on.
Let's gather together in the kitchen.
Fuck you.
Let's create, connect, and feel the love.
So you don't have a right to self-defense in this fucking country. That pretty much seals it. What is this now? A family of Kyle Rittenhouse started an online website to pay for his defense. Sick. Are they gonna shut it down? I wonder how quickly they're gonna shut that shit down. It's absolute fucking disgrace, man. Like, the idea that you're safe in your own domicile, I mean, that's just
The family
dunzo.
of the Illinois teenager accused of killing 2 men during summer protest in Kenosha is now selling merchandise online to pay for his defense. Kyle Rittenhouse's mother is selling everything from shirts and phone covers to sports bras on his online website. The attorney for one of the men Rittenhouse is accused of seriously wounding is outraged about it.
Yeah,
they're going to be
fuck
celebrating
you.
Christmas without their loved ones.
Fuck you.
Meanwhile, Kyle Rittenhouse's mom is trying to profit off.
Fuck you, you piece of garbage with your stupid fucking bandito mask on, you lying progressive slab of shit. Fuck you, he defended his life, and you're framing it, oh, they're trying to profit off of it. Go
and
fuck
I think
yourself.
it's frankly vile and disgusting and in
Unbelievable.
extreme poor taste.
Yeah, it is for different reasons.
Rittenhouse's attorneys say that the teen acted in self-defense during protests following the police shooting of Jacob Blake in August.
Yeah, the completely fucking justified shooting of Jacob Blake, because he was going for a knife. Just gonna keep hammering that home. What is this? What is this third? Defensive attorney for Kyle Rittenhouse filed a motion to dismiss Tuesday. Oh, yeah, this is in reverse order, but this one is a little bit more in favor of Mr. Rittenhouse, I think. Let's see. What do you gotta say? Come on.
Presenting Home Chef Oven Ready Meals. They're as easy as 1, 2, 3. Step 1. Combine.
More than 4 months after Kyle Rittenhouse arrested. Killer. Curfew bullshit. What the fuck is this? I'm like hypnotized by these propaganda jams. Homicide and illegal possession of firearm, curfew violation. Seems like a laugh. Yeah. Okay, got it. It's like, yeah, I agree with you, but like super fucking dramatic music. So, yeah, that's bullshit. It seems like in this day and age, you don't really have the ability to justifiably defend yourself, and that is worrisome, in my opinion. I'm sure that most of my viewers would agree. But yeah, this fucking shit, too, this Argentina abortion thing. What do you guys think about abortion in the chat? I'm sure that whatever you think about it, you'll think that this is ghastly.
Resulta aprobado con 38 con 38 votos afirmativos y 29 negativos y una abstención resulta aprobado. Se convierte en ley y se gira al Poder Ejecutivo.
So they're this stoked about being able to off their own kids, dude. Look at it. Woohoo! So, okay, so even dispensing with all these rhetorical terms people keep talking about, like pro-life, pro-choice, I don't give a fuck what you call yourself. This is ghoulish, right? This is fucking just like ghastly to look at, to hear. I mean, just given the context of it, right? Yeah, my body, my choice, but demand everyone get a vaccine. Exactly. Dude, feminism is cancer. My body, my choice, but I'm totally allowed to circumcise my boy also. Or kill my kid, right? Like, the entire idea of, like, my body, my choice is always a lie. So we can kill our kids, so we can prioritize life projects over the life that we created. Holy fuck, man. What is that, like green poisonous gas to like symbolize death? I don't know, what is that? Yay, death! Become a genetic dead end! Woohoo! That is just fucking bizarro, man. Approach. Okay, here's another one. Wait, this is from a little bit ago, but it's relevant. This is fucking. I've never delved into these videos about South American abortion victories, like pro-abortion victories. JLP Berta! Dude, look at these harlots. Holy crap, man. Oh, man, I guess you can only just, like, get clown pilled about it. You know what I mean? That's all you can really do. Crying over it. That is so. I don't think people come to this conclusion organically. Do you? I just really. It probably comes through just like boatloads of propaganda, just all the time. You know, just everywhere you look. Oh wait, this is the same one, I think, as I watched before. Maybe. Yeah, base downvote ratio, based ratio. Based ratio, at least, on CopeTube. Celebrations erupt in Buenos Aires as Argentina legalizes Schmorschman. Son of a bitch, man.
Resulta aprobado con 38 votos afirmativos y 29 negativos y una abstención.
Oh, the Trump Tower stuff in Chicago? Hell yeah. Oh yeah, with B&B, I did a stream with him the other day. He was out there with me at all, pretty much all those, if not, yeah, all of those.
Aprobado, se convierte en ley y se gira al Poder Ejecutivo.
Angare, riba. Expedite genocide. Wow. Just, wow. Just eruptions. Fucking just unreal, man. I can't believe this. Like, hysterics, you know? Like, they're at a rock concert to celebrate death, you know? Like, the ability to kill our own kids, woohoo! And the idea, you know, I realize the idea of choice is very, it's just, they're being very disingenuous, of course, right? Like, the choice has already been made. They've already, you know, become pregnant. It's not the patriarchy forcing the fucking kid to come. It's your body, right? Your body, your, you know, biology is making it happen, obviously. You know? Fully marked floppy disk. What's up, dude? It was the Milo DePaul stuff and what you did with him downtown. Looked from a few years back. You might be talking about... yeah, the DePaul thing. That was my first set of fucking videos. I'm gonna do a stream on those videos one of these days. That was when I was still kind of a progressive. That was like 4 or 5 years ago or some shit. Way different time, but like pretty much like the spark of like a lot of the stuff we're seeing now. It's disturbing to see people celebrating abortion celebrated to such an extent. Yeah, dude. I mean, look at this person weeping with of course, their mask is down because they take that seriously. Don't you know? Yeah, taking your mask down and keeping it up is always conditional depending on just who it is and when and how they want to virtue signal and who they want to yell at, you know, and which business they want to burn down, of course. But this is a brainwashed, crazy woman, unfortunately. Changes everything for millions of women. This is health. Yeah, it is. Is anybody else like as black-pilled as I am, just knowing as a matter of fact that even if you're not in Argentina, I mean, you're pretty much anywhere, a plurality or a majority, I would say if you're in a big city, you know, like a big dumb Democrat city, most, if not a plurality of the women are going to be pretty much like this. It's just so black-pilling, dude. You could go to jail for deciding not to have anything, to have an abortion. Yeah, see, at least the fucking parentheses is like clearing it up. You're not deciding not to have anything. That's such a bizarre way of wording it. Decide not to have it. Well, no, you're killing it. Many women did not die for this to be a law. That's a fucking myth. Stop it. Are they talking about like coat hanger abortions? Like that's so rare compared to the rule. Because up until like I guess relatively recently, the very idea of offing your own kid was just kind of unheard of, wasn't it? Until someone, Olive, I wonder who, started injecting this propaganda into our countries, or various countries around the world. Just a baby death, like, satanic cult huddle. What is this? Yay! It's delusional, like, they all have masks on that aren't even sealing their faces, you know, they're not... It's like, they're all delusional, hysterical women who think that wearing a mask is a good thing and that killing their own kids is a good idea. This is sick, dude. What's this one? Wait, did I click on this one already? I don't think I did. Damn, they'll turn out for this. Okay, another based ratio, but... Adios coat hangers, but hello, baby vac 9000. Like... Again, like, the coat hanger thing is an extreme outlier. It's a canard made up by the left. And now, I guess in Argentina, they're going to have, like, millions of, you know, thousands of abortions every year, just like a lot of other countries. Hooray! We're going in to vote. BLM fucking, yeah, so they have the extra Satanism. Fucking sickening, dude. This is just a fucking mob of crazy, violent, hysterical Satanists. This is just a cult. It's like ideologically possessed people. Sick, dude. Riggers. Rigging. I hate that kind of art.
La felicidad más grande son muchísimos años nuestros de lucha, de marchas, de encuentros, de tardes compartidas con compañeras de lucha, de recibir represión. Logramos algo que va a quedar para nuestras hijas, para todas nuestras generaciones que vienen.
Oh, dude, a fucking, you know, a Guar concert is wholesome by comparison. A fucking Marilyn Manson or, like, whatever. Dude, Slipknot concert from 1999 is wholesome by comparison. Gigi Allen and Anal Cunt is fucking wholesome by comparison.
A partir de hoy, el país es más libre, es más justo. Las mujeres tenemos más derechos, los conquistamos. Esto es una lucha histórica, necesaria. Ya no podíamos esperar más.
Yeah, I can't read our habla español.
Estamos sembrando semilla en toda América Latina. Argentina está siendo pionera una vez más en conquistar derechos de las mujeres y mujeres gestantes, personas gestantes.
Bogus, dude. Maybe check out one more, maybe two more. Damn, dude, a lot of clips about this. Sheesh. Maybe there's like better translations. No. Nasty, dude. Wob, 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 kill your fucking offspring. It's fun to do. Oh, it's just a clump of cells. Even though it's not. Yeah, dude, the chin diaper crowd, I guess, can be convinced into anything. Speaking of which, if I could find this. Did you fucking know that Japan has Antifa? Like, of all fucking countries, I would expect. I mean, I was under the impression that Japan was a little bit more nationalist, maybe like quasi right wing, or what is the term I'm looking for? Maybe nativist or what have you. But they do seem to have Antifa cells there. But let's check this out. There's a podcast about it.
Researcher and translator Gregor Wakonik on the history of Antifa and anti-fascism in Japan.
Gator!
We'll discuss the recent solidarity events of Black Lives Matter activists in Japan.
Why the fuck are the... What the fuck? Why? Why would there be BLM activists or people in solidarity with Chaz in Japan? Why? Don't they... I mean, I was under the impression that they value things like harmony and order and symmetry, at least to an extent, but, I mean...
Recent police violence, which kicked off a wave of...
police violence.
Police protests in
justified police violence.
Japan. The rich history of Antifa and the terrible history of fascism that it's long tried to oppose, and the parallels between the ethno-nationalism
there we go.
Of a figure like a Boris Johnson or Donald Trump when compared to the very same far-right ethno-nationalism of a Shinzo Abe.
That's what I was talking about. Yeah, I mean, they're saying fuck Abe. They're taking for granted that their nation is for the Japanese. It's like, what, 98.8 point something percent Japanese, some Chinese, some Korean, but these people are just, I mean, I guess every country, it seems like, has these people now, these fucking rats, these traitors, like...
There's many interesting parallels between what's going on all over the world, and I think those who are opposed to fascism, racism, and the ruling class would do well to learn from one another. Gregor's conversation...
So they're going to start spreading, like, anti-Japanese rhetoric throughout Japan now. This is bullshit.
Opened up a whole new world of insight and perspective on the history of anti-fascism in Japan. For more conversations like this, you can go to our back catalog on the Arts of Travel. We're on Apple, Spotify, Android, and other podcast platforms. And you can go to our main website, asiaarttours.com. We post interviews, articles, and other ways of organizing with the artists, academics, and thinkers.
Go mass report that stuff in Minecraft.
From all over the globe and Asia. All right, here's our conversation with Gregor Wakonig on Antifa in Japan.
Bye.
Enjoy.
Man, I can't believe this, dude.
Exchange year at the Hosei University in Tokyo, and I'm research, like my sort of field of research is our anti-fascist movements in Japan, and next year I hope that I can publish my book on this topic.
And so to just center this conversation in the everyday, because people might not be aware of this if they're not...
What the fuck is this? So do they want to bring just Fallout 4-esque shanty towns to their nation? What are they... What the fuck? Why?
Closely following Japan. On 5/30, on May the 30th, what were the events that led to an outpouring of anger that had been, I think, years in the making and years of organizing from groups like Anti-Fascists and CRAC and some of these groups in Japan? And could you talk about sort of Japan's own moment of...
This guy just sounds like a fat soy beard bug man, but geez, I just can't believe it.
Anger at racism and police brutality.
What happened on the 30th of May was that there was a demonstration in Shibuya. For those who don't know, Shibuya is like in Tokyo, like one of maybe the most well-known district. It's like more like a party district, and there is this famous crossing and stuff. So there was a demonstration, but why was there a demonstration? Around a big week before the 30th of May, 1 or 2 weeks before, a Kurdish man released a video. He was like mistreated by his, like, I'm talking like, you know, from his perspective and from the demonstrators' perspective, that he was mistreated by the police.
Keeping in mind, of course, that all progressives ever do is lie 100% of the time, without exception. So, keeping that in mind moving forward, we shall proceed. Oh, this poor immigrant was mistreated. Yeah, sure. I'm not gonna, like... I know that can happen in Japan, but, like, it's probably overblown, like most things leftists talk about. Because they lie.
In the video, we can show that they are very rough with him. There is even a kick against him, and he had some bruises after this. And according to the Kurdish men and the demonstrators, this was a act of racist violence by the police. So what happened on the 30th of May was that, in solidarity with this Kurdish men, and also in general to denounce racist police violence, around 200 to 300 people hit the streets of Shibuya.
Cooks.
First, the demonstration just went a pretty big route through Shibuya, and then in the end, it came to the Shibuya police station. It's a very, very big building. And the police there, people were just loud and stuff, and the police started to run into people, shove them, and one person was arrested. And it got this
good, because what I've heard about how brutal Japanese prisons are, well, you know, he'll get what's coming to him, hopefully.
It got pretty much, it was picked up by media worldwide, which usually is not the case with anti-racist or anti-fascist demonstration in Japan, since they exist for decades now. So, but this was the first time that, like, maybe it really got, or maybe not the first time, one of the first time that it really got international attention, which was also due to the fact that it was coincidentally in the time when the Black Lives Matter movement worldwide gained momentum.
Yeah, it's a big coincidence. It's not like this guy. I mean, this guy alone looks like some sort of like opportunistic grifter, you know, like he's trying to get something going. Yeah, it's just a coincidence that after all these corporations drop buku bucks on like George Floyd, this, that, and the other, like getting put on the back of jerseys, like bleak rapists and murderers getting put on the back of jerseys and stuff like that by the NFL and shit. Like, yeah, it's just one big old coincidence, buddy. I'm sure.
The demonstration was also also the Kurdish man who was the victim of this police violence. He also said it's also a demonstration in solidarity with the Black Lives Movement.
I feel the protests that
what sort of solidarity do Japanese have with Blakes exactly? Could someone sound off in the chat and explain that one to me?
Happened on the 6th of June were particularly in Osaka, where the organizers had formed a Black Lives Matter Facebook group, and then in Tokyo as well. There's a lot of interesting solidarity building, but for the protests on 5/30, though these were happening at the time of George Floyd, could we talk a bit about, just for the protests on 5/30, and then we'll turn to the protests in June, who were some of the organizers?
These are the fucking kind of idiots that are more angry about like one overblown, one over-exaggerated incident of police brutality happening to a migrant, but don't give a shit about 10 instances of migrants like raping, beheading, acid attacking, mutilating, truck attacking, vandalizing, like whatever. They don't, I mean, there's bizarre, lying, destructive people at the end of the day.
And for people who are unaware, because a lot of foreigners have a very sort of misinformed view of Japan, of just sort of everything's harmonious, we have bullet trains, here's a bento box, you know, very sort of small-minded, I think, framework of Japan through tourism or through popular culture. What are some of the instances or issues of racial discrimination that have been going on for quite a while in Japan?
The protest as such on 5:30 was organized by a few people who are now for years active in the movement against the forceful and detention of immigrants in detention centers. So that means the demonstration didn't come from nowhere. It was the people who organized it were very well versed in what they were doing, because they were doing anti-racist work for years now. For people.
So anybody who happens to be Japanese who's watching this, it's anti-racism now. They're pushing this. They're pushing anti-Japanese rhetoric in your country, like right the fuck now. I mean, that's what you heard from this guy, right the fuck now. Gregor Wakunig, this is the guy. I mean, he's pushing it. Type 74 Nana Yonshiki Sensha says, Japan is a badass country. I agree. How the hell are they fascist? They have a self-defense force and probably one of the most peaceful countryside militarily. I mean, maybe the improper starting point is this notion that fascism is inherently bad. You know what I mean? Like, that's sort of this Hollywood sort of brainwashing, like, brainworm that we might want to shake. I'm not saying that we should rush out and all become any sort of political denomination, but we do have just open fucking communists ruining everything. So, at the behest of the bankster class, I might add. Always got to pepper that one in there. So I don't really think Mino, like, so-called fascists, like a Salvini or a Trump or an Abe, I really don't think that that's... At least the people being accused of being fascists, I don't think that they're anywhere near as threatening as these people, you know?
People who don't know what's happening in detention centers in Japan and why there is a movement against the detention of immigrants there, I will explain it a bit. Japan as such has a very, from all the G8 or G7 nations, Japan has by far the lowest number of how many refugees they accept. There is, like, per year, I don't know the complete exact numbers, but there is like thousands of people who apply for refugee status, and per year the number of accepted people is in the two digits. It's like between
awesome.
20 and 30 or even less. Something.
Hey, can America, the UK, Germany, Sweden, Canada, Australia, and a few other countries that I'm probably leaving out have that too? Please?
Times. Which creates a problem that a lot of people who get accepted by Japan, even they are refugees. I mean, there is at least a few dozen people from Syria who applied in the only last year, and which creates the problem that those people, I mean, from Syria, where should they go? On the other hand, you have people in these detention centers who have been living in Japan for years, and only for some small, like, maybe they forgot some to fill out some small line on the immigration papers.
Right, dude. Okay, so all progressives ever do is lie 100% of the time, without exception. You know it, I know it. Oh, I forgot to fill out a line. That's like one guy, right? Okay, right? We all know that was one guy, one time. And the rest of the time, it's like, no, they were problematic, like not paying their rent or like committing crimes or whatever the fuck, dude. It's probably all kinds of shit that they're leaving out.
That your visa is revoked. What happens in these detention centers is even worse. Basically, going there means that you are being locked up 24/7. There is no way of like going outside, or even like you don't really have like in a proper jail where you can have like library or whatever, like some activities. You don't have those in the detention centers.
Dude, they're gonna... Okay, so like I said before, Japan has really brutal fucking prison conditions. That might have something to do with... I mean, I'm no expert on criminology or whatever the fuck. But maybe that has something to do with their relatively lower per capita rate of crime. Also the fact that they're homogeneous, they're 98 point whatever % Japanese, racially and ethnically, and all that fun stuff. That, I mean, again, they've embraced harmony and order, I guess, until these people came along. And other, like, we can maybe load up some of the channels I've seen before. Like, I've seen, like, Japanese tourism YouTube channels that seem to be pushing the sort of, like, pro-immigration line into Japan, this pro-tourism line into Japan. Like, I think, what's he called? Nobita from Japan. It's a channel that I've seen before that kind of might fit under that category. We'll continue.
So people get depressed there. The food is, what I've heard, very, very bad. Basically, it's every day the same bento, which is not enough. You are not allowed to speak in any language other than Japanese.
Based?
Of course, I mean, for people who just come to the country and they don't know the language, what else are they going to talk than their native language or some other language that they speak? So you can get punished, actually, and there are cases where people got beat up by the guards because they couldn't speak Japanese. There was several cases.
Well, whatever. Once again, all they do is lie. But the thing is I actually support the idea that if you want to rent an apartment in a country, if you want to become a citizen, you should become fluent in the language that is most, predominant in that nation. So, I mean, if it's Japan, yeah, you should be fluent in Japanese. If it's England, you should, or America or Canada or whatever, you should have to be fluent in English in order to rent an apartment. Yeah, I mean, let's spare the rod, okay, for people who fuck up a little bit. Okay, I'm not, that brutal yet, kid. But again, I'm just gonna go out on a limb and assume that anything that a leftist tells you, no matter where the fuck they are, is an exaggeration or a lie. So,
of suicide in the jails. There is frequent cases of people hunger striking and to a point where people die. Like, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know, like, last year there was an Indian man who died there. He was basically just left to die. And
no numbers, of course, right? Like I said,
even right now, while we speak, some inmates of the Osaka immigrant detention center are on hunger strike. And the point is, we are talking about several hundred people Japan-wide who are in jail right now. And what makes this even more severe is that those people, they really don't know what will happen with them. Because let's say someone from Syria, he can't, or Somalia. Those are people who cannot go back to their country. They will be killed. And they will not go. But
I mean, that's like a real bummer and everything, but, it's just tugging at the heartstrings of people who've watched a lot of just Disney movies and, I guess, anime.
Are held in this detention centers indefinitely. So there is cases of people who are in this detention center for like 5 or 6 years, and those detention centers are built as temporary facilities. So the most one should be there is the most maybe 2 or 3 months, but not for years. So people like depression, suicide is rampant, and violence, of course, is rampant inside this detention center, which is jails basically, but very poor jails. Like, you don't have
like kids in cages type shit. I don't know, man. It's just all the rhetoric seems the same, and although I know that Japan is considerably more brutal and strict than the States.
All the stuff you have in a normal jail. And yes, so this was like people who had this background fighting against these detention centers and for human immigration policy of the Japanese state and against the mistreatment of those inmates. Those people organized the protest in Shibuya.
You did this masterful sort of probably preview
Beta.
of what I'm sure will be a very rich and thoughtful paper or book on Antifa in Japan. And on 5:30, one of the largest sort of presences you could see in those marches were Antifa. So Antifa flags, Antifa logos, organizers on digital platforms saying, yes, this is associated with Antifa. And again, to sort of build solidarity with people in the West, but also particularly for Americans who like to always say, we were here first, regardless of if other people have been doing movements for a long time simultaneously or in completely different ways.
So yeah, he always has to fit in a jab against America because he's a fat faggot treat.
What is the history of Antifa in Japan, and what are some of these movements or causes that they've been fighting for a long time but are now just sort of being discovered, even though it's been going on for quite a while?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say, like, Antifa as such is not, like, especially against, since Trump started his anti-Antifa campaign.
Yep. Well, he just sort of, like, he just had rhetoric on Twitter about declaring them as a terrorist organization, but much like the Wall, I don't think it was really, like, followed through on, because obviously look at how they're conducting themselves. And even, you know, it doesn't really seem to matter.
A lot of people associate Antifa, they think it's some kind of organization or like this flag or so, which is not.
No, it's not an organization, it's just an idea like Rose City Antifa or like your organization.
Antifa
Okay,
is
dude.
an abbreviation which stands for anti-fascism.
Yeah.
And so it's basically just a word for anti-fascist movements, which of course date back since the rise of fascism. It's like since the 20s.
Frankfurt School?
The flag, which is featured so prominently, like a lot of times on the internet, of some terrorist organization.
Yep.
Is just a flag which was used back then in the 30s. It was like a flag which was, the flag itself was created by the German Communist Party in 1930.
The KPD, Rosa Luxemburg, yep.
Which means when when fascism was basically on the verge of taking over in back then still democratic Germany. So it was like back then you could say it was an organization. It was the anti-fascist like organization of the German Communist Party. But today it has like everything can be anti-fascist. Like
so it's everything and nothing, and it's just whatever. It's malleable definitions, of course. So shady.
Academy Antifa.
Shifty.
Like even the German Social Democratic Party, which is by no.
Yeah. So Antifa, or like basically Antifa was comprised of social democrats and communists in Weimar Germany in the 30s. It's basically what it was like. So anytime. No, these people have a specific fucking organization.
It means really a radical left party.
It's like SDS, IWW, you know, Rose City Antifa. These people have organizing. They have direct funding. Like, these guys are total fucking liars. We've been over this a million times.
For American listeners, you could say it's like the Democrats. They even tweeted last week when they had their birthday, like, we are, I don't know, like 150 years old and still Antifa. So it's not a terrorist movement at all. It's just an abbreviation for anti-fascism. So turning to Japan.
Yeah, except for all the evidence that we have of the terrorism that they carry out.
Japan has its own culture of fascism, of course. Japan was waging war together with Germany and Italy, Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. So. And also ideologically, I mean, why did they form this alliance? It's pretty clear. It wasn't just only expansive, like nationalist imperialism, but also like the ideologies were very different, very similar. Like
this is all projection. Like, they're spreading this crappy social justice leftist ideology that originated in like Western. You know, colleges and stuff, Frankfurt School, yada yada yada, is coming to Japan, and he's projecting clearly, like he's describing what his movement's doing.
Back then, the Japanese, I would there is the word Tenno fascism, Tenno, which means for the Japanese emperor, which basically had something like the function of some Mussolini or Hitler, like the one leader, and with a very, very strong, basically absolutist government, which was rooted in military, in Japan even more than maybe in Nazi Germany or in fascism. But basically, it boils down that Japan as such was a fascist dictatorship in even before the Second World War, but of course in Second World War. So when do anti-fascist movements start in Japan?
Apparently, when you're like when you have, I don't know, just peace and harmony, and you just have like one or two instances of maybe an immigrant getting mistreated by a guard, like, and you of course have access to YouTube and Facebook and smartphones, so they're probably inundated with all of this fucking goofy leftist propaganda. So even though Japan's the kind of country that you'd think wouldn't adopt this kind of crap, at least a few rats, at least a couple traitors will. I mean, and we got to be mindful of that everywhere.
That's not a question. Like Japanese Antifa, we can trace back even to the 1920s when leftist groups, especially anarchists or communist groups, started with some resistance against the rise against the fascization of Japanese society and politics. Even back then in the 20s and 30s, we have mass arrests of communists and anarchists, and also
awesome,
not leftist, opponents of the Tenno-fascist system. So these resistance.
I mean, this is pretty much what I at least have been pining for. I want these Antifa terrorists to be fucking arrested on sight. I mean, and every single time they turn up and that doesn't happen, I think is an affront to the very idea of this country. I just, every time I see that, it's just a little bit chips away. You know what I mean? It's just
although small, then basically continued until the end of the Second World War. And after the Second World War, when Japan, at least on paper, with the new constitution, became democratic, we have this resurgence, this big resurgence of especially leftist movements who called themselves anti-fascist. So there was like a lot, like trade unions become legal again. Leftist ideologies, of course, gain momentum. The Communist Party reemerges, which until today is not some fringe party, but it's like a 10% or even more party in Japan. So it's, it does have something. It has something to say, and like when it comes to like Antifa, let's say, like, and at this time, especially in the 40s and 50s, anti-fascist activists focus especially on one thing. They focus on the abolishment of the what they still call Tenno Seido, like the emperor system. Especially back then, but even now, some parts of the Japanese left say that basically, since the Japanese monarchy still exists, and at least on paper, the Tenno, the emperor, is still the first guy in the state, that this system of that even today, that the Tenno system, the emperor system, is a symbol of back then fascism. So in the 40s and 50s, of course, these groups were much more fierce against the emperor. Like back then, the emperor, which in Hirohito.
Man, how base was Hirohito?
Which was in the Second World War. He was still alive, and they said he's the guy. He's like the top one war criminal. So why is he running around here free? And which leads to very, very fierce protests. And one of the first protests, which we can call anti-fascist protests after World War II, occurred in 1951, if I'm not 51 or 52, it should be 51, at the famous Kyoto University, which is like one of the top elite universities in Japan. So back then, the emperor made a visit to the university, and back then also Kyoto University was back then one of the strongholds of Japanese leftist students. So they organized a protest against it, and several thousand people showed up, between 2,000 or 3,000. And there was like several demands. Some of them demanded we want to have a talk with him. Some others demanded that he should resign as such and not be allowed to enter the premises. And I haven't researched what exactly happened by now, but I know that there was like scuffles with police, because back then this was of course a big taboo in Japan. To say anything against the emperor, he was still seen as the big light of the big leader of the Japanese family, since there was no real defascization of Japanese society, which was carried.
Why do we want to have a defascization of any society? I think we want a decommunization of a society.
Out by larger parts of the Japanese.
Right? I mean, can I get an amen in the chat for that one at least?
Society. So this was like one of the first instances of Antifa in Japan. What comes to mind later is, of course, the fight of Japanese minority groups themselves.
How did anti-fascism then in Japan evolve to, we see these sort of far-right groups emerging who would be very racist, very against minorities or immigrants?
Let's look that up, dude. Let's see. Japan far-right groups. Yeah, let's check that out. Let's get another perspective in here. Japan. Oh God, from Vox, Vocative. Is this really Japan? Oh, Nobita. That's the guy I was talking about. Asian boss. Interview with Japanese ultra-nationalists. Hell yeah, dude. Yeah. The lying press, dude.
スキャンダル最初は例えば笑いたいとスキャンダルが大々的一面、自分のスキャンダルが間違ったらベタ記事3面だろ。
はい。
こういうような卑怯なテクニックを使うのは本当じゃねえかよ。変なんだらへし折ってやるんだよ、女だよ。
Hell yeah. Based? Wow, I had no idea this was real, dude. I mean, I could have assumed.
私が属している団体、民族の意思同盟ですけども、代表の森脇修介。
Alliance of the People's Will, dude. I mean, this. Okay, so this is yet another. This is like my stream about the Japanese, the Italian far right the other day. That just sounds like a populist right, sort of, Japanese, Japan first kind of movement. I mean, and of course they'd be like, oh, this is far-right extremists, blah, 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 blah. And really all they're saying is like, hey, can we just not prioritize hostile foreign outgroups over our own people, please? Can we not do that? Thanks.
人柄といいますか、カリスマ性、そういった人物に惹かれたってところです、私は。
あなたが見る日本政治の現状はどんなもので、どんな変化や改革が必要だと思いますか？
要は侵略させない他国が日本。
Yep, see it exactly as I said.
攻められない。あそこは強いから攻めるのはまずいという形の憲法なり、軍隊なりを持つべきであって、戦争はもちろん反対ですから。
あなたの意見が伝わるあるいは反映されるためにどこまでなら圧力をかけたいと思えますか？
そうでしょうね。最終的には話し合いが通じなければ、肉体言語って言葉がありますけど、言葉で通じないんであれば肉体を使うしかないっていう
DC on the 6th? Anyone?
最終的にはそういった思想がありますけど。
先の大東亜戦争を侵略扱いする慰安婦問題があったとするの。
Comfort women. What is a comfort women?
態度を変えておらず、何もなかった。慰安婦問題でっち上げ。僕たちは反日です。言えばいいじゃねえか堂々と。僕たちは中国共。
What the? Look, there's Gaijin right here. Look at it. Look, these are some, look, Vancouver. Here's like a Canadian cuck. Oh my god, why are they so angry? Oh.
担当の日本支部です。言えばいいじゃねえかよ。
では今あなたがやっているこの集会は合法なものですか？
合法です。もちろん合法です。はい。
で今までに警察との衝突があったことはありますか？
衝突はしょっちゅうあります。
あ、そうなんですか？
衝突といってもね、違法じゃありません。バリケードやって通す通さないとかね、入れろ入れないとか。
押していくんですか？
まあそれはありますね。はい。
怪我とかしたことないんですか？
ないです。うちらがそんなひどいことやらない団体なんですよ。いやそんな違法なことをやるつもりない。相手を殴ったりとかしない。
そもそも右翼のアジェンダを
See, these guys are based, dude.
目にしたときに、計画や意図を見たときに何があなたを引きつけましたか？
まずその前にね、右翼っていう代名詞がね、
なんてお呼びすれば
Yeah, it's like a buzz phrase. That's dead.
超国家主義運動。
まあ民族の指導面でいいですよ。民族の指導面。
It's populist right. It's Japan first. Like no shit.
失礼しました。じゃあ民族の意思同盟のアジェンダを目にしたときに何があなたを引きつけましたか？
自分の生まれ育った国ね、愛するってことですよ。愛するということ。で全てを愛するってこと。
あなたがここに参加したいと思わせるような何らかの出来事、あるいは政治的な変革があったんですか？過去に。
Yeah, I mean, like, socialism itself isn't really the biggest enemy. I mean, like, I think right now it would be an absolute fucking nightmare, but what do we have right? I mean, we're living in a nightmare right fucking now. I mean, listen, who's basically keeping us locked down? It's basically Amazon and the banks, and it's, it's Google, it's Netflix, it's Facebook, it's Bill Gates telling us that we need to take a vaccine. Like, think about it.
変革というよりも、例えばドイツのヒトラーというね、独裁者がいます。でもその本をね、私は小学校4年の時見ました。なんでこんなに嫌われているのか。逆にここまで嫌われている人間素晴らしいなと思ったんです。何かあるなと。だったらということでそこに、ある意味で、関心を持ち、そうしていくことによって、ドイツはそこまで愛してんだなと、いうことが分かったわけです。やっぱり人から嫌われてるってことは、言わないすればある意味で好かれてるわけですね。でもしかするとヒトラーを愛しちゃいけない、ヒトラーを褒めちゃ、もしかすると褒めたことによって
タブーみたいな、
そう言わない。
Yeah, it's illegal in Germany probably.
でそれを教育として教えてる。これおかしいよね。だから自分が全てに対して理解して。
It's illegal to praise Adolf, but it's like apparently okay to just like invade the country and just like take over and do like abuse German girls and acid attack this and truck of peace that.
自分が好き嫌い、そこで右も左もあってもいいんですよ。自分の考えであれば。ところが人の考えを受け入れするとか、そういうような無責任な人が社会をダメにする。
じゃああなたが見る日本政治の現状はどんなもので、どんな変化や改革が革変が必要だと思いますか？
今の日本に政治はありません。いわゆる日本の外交ってのは国連中心外交、国連に従うということ。だから国民を最低限生かせる。
That's based. See that statement right there. I think the American right can learn a lot from that. The so-called limited government people, big government bad, big business good. Those kind of people, those goofy boomer types. A role of government is to prop up the people, and to prop up the family and to prop up meritocracy. You know what I mean? To prop up community.
生きてもらいたいわけですよ。 その愛情があれば衣食住はただ当たり前じゃないですか。それは、国民に生まれてきたんだから最低限生きてもらわなきゃ困るんだから、そして健全な国民にする。自分一人が生活も苦しい、共働き、子供も2人ぐらい食っていけない、
Yeah.
逆には医者もかかれないでしょ、年金もない。
Yep.
どうやって。
Yeah, see, America is like that too. I mean, and how is a policy of just rapacious, debt-based, fake money, you know, debt slavery, like debt prison, capitalism, like how is that pro-family exactly? How is that, you know, how is that pro-America or pro-Japan for that matter? I'm kind of at a loss, you know. The Charlie Kirks of the world are going to say, well, oh, capitalism, great. Well, you know, maybe the little guy's great, but, you know, not Bezos, who's funding all this crap, and not the banks who are funding this crap.
国民が生きていけるんですか、安心できるんですか、他人のことなんて考えてられないわけですよ。国がしっかり面倒見て、適正配分する。
なるほど。
で、一人でもね、泣いてる人を見ちゃいけないんですよ。苦しい思いしちゃいけない。ということをすれば。
Yeah, the problem with socialists is that they're almost always in favor of like crazy shit that doesn't make any sense, like opening borders and being lax on crime and, you know, pushing feminism and like just all kinds of chaotic shit. So that's more so the problem, is that what you're perceiving is like people who brand themselves as socialists are going around doing like horribly degenerate, dysgenic things.
いい国だなと思うじゃないですか。ここまで面倒見てくれるんだと。しかしながら施したわけじゃない。だからこそギブアンテイクなんです。周りの人間、国家に奉仕する、競って行使する、これをさせるようなことを仕向けなきゃいけないんです。
なるほど、そのために今の活動をされてるんですね。
そうです。そのためには、やっぱり何が良くて何が悪いかということをね、明確にしなきゃいけない。今の社会っていうのは悪いものに対して悪いと言えない社会なんです。
Yeah, exactly. I agree with this guy. Our society won't let us speak out on things that are wrong. I mean, in this day and age, you're punished if you're the kind of guy who's like Chad enough to like call out just any of these leftist canards. Like, what happens? Someone busts out like a cell phone and oh, he refused to wear a mask or whatever it is, or like, oh, he doesn't support BLM, canceled. You know, our society won't let us speak out on things that are wrong. There's a complete inversion of morality and right and wrong. It's totally true.
綺麗なものじゃないとね、美しいものを見たら美しいと思う、汚いものを見たら汚いって言ってやる、綺麗にしなさいって言ってやるじゃないですか。だから別にタバコを貸してでいいとこあるじゃない、法律とかじゃなくて俺たちがやるところに汚いもん。
Yeah, dude. These guys like patrol the neighborhoods. They do, you know, like, or the Italian guys, Forza Nuova, from the other stream. They were doing like night patrols. These guys, you know, they clean up trash. They do night safety walks. They donate to charity. You know, like, how are these people painted as evil, snarling, like horned demons? I don't get it. Oh wow, dude. That's fucking brutal, man. Purge the filth, man. I mean, that's pretty fashy right there. That was a pretty fascist statement. Mind you, like, I gotta qualify to win this stream. Like, I'm not going that far. Like, I just, you know, I'm more like closer to like Pat Buchanan or something like that, which he got called a whole bunch of fucking names throughout the 90s and 2000s as well. But I stick my cig butts in my pocket unless I'm smoking out a wasp nesty bowl. What the fuck? I think what you're trying to say is that you're polite and you don't throw your butts on the street. The thing about Japan, though, what I've heard is that they have actually a kind of a lack of garbage receptacles. So, but still, I mean, even in spite of that, they will keep their garbage or whatever in their pocket, you know, until they actually find a garbage can. I mean, that's, you know, That's a society, man. That's a populace. Excuse me. Wait, let me find another video about the Japan far right is way the fuck more interesting than Japantifa, dude. Those guys are fucking cocks and liars, dude. I mean, lying way more often. New nationalism, far right voices get louder in Japan. Yakuza, organized crime, and Japanese right wing. Interesting. Wait, how about this one? AP. Imperialists. What's this guy got to say from 5 years ago? This might. Holy crap, dude. What if, damn, dude, I mean, what if Americans were like 1/10 as pumped about America as the Japanese appear to be, at least in that video, are about their own country? Japan's right wing. Are they actually gonna be unbiased here?
Fuck. This is not Tampa or Kalamazoo. This is the Japanese city of Kawasaki. And what Vocative saw here in late 2013 may well be America in the looking glass. An uprising of Japanese immigrants getting preferential treatment.
F Korea, dude. I don't really concur. I mean, North Korea, definitely.
Now we are surrounded by countries with strong anti-Japanese sentiment. China, South Korea, North Korea.
Koreans invaded Takashima. They abducted Japanese and killed them. Offenders, kidnappers, killers. They are destroying our peace. Enemy of Japan.
Chad, dude.
Enemy of world. Enemy of Earth.
Look at how, like, you know, Japanese don't even fucking need a movement like groypers. I mean, dude, that dude right there was just a regular old dude. It's like a default, like, quasi-groyper, in a sense. You know what I mean? Someone who's just like, no, fuck you, I'm pro-Japan. Japan first.
World, enemy of Earth. These people are trash. They are shit. This is not racism. This is extermination.
Kawasaki has become a favorable place for immigrants. Even the laws favor them. The crimes are committed by immigrants, yet the papers report Japanese names. Our taxes pay.
See, exactly. Like, Rittenhouse defending himself, he still gets blamed. I mean, Covington, Kavanaugh, whatever. Like, the mustard-stained shirt lady with the husband when they invaded their property. I forgot what their names. McMichaels, I think. Just the list goes on, dude. And it's not just, like, rich people either getting invaded. But basically, like, every time, like, a crazy leftist or a foreigner does some violence, they find a way to blame it on white people. You know, it's the most insane thing. So apparently the Japanese feel that experience too, at least the Japanese right wing.
The faces may be different, but the anger is the same. For us, this sounds a lot like so many people in states like California, Arizona, and Texas.
As a Japanese person, it's a little sad these people are demonstrating against immigration.
Beta.
Super isolated. They're not racist. Definitely want more like foreigners to like live here.
Shut up, woman.
Whether Japanese or not, humans need to help each other.
I'm scared for my kids because my kids want to grow up here.
We are the brave citizens taking back Japan. Kawasaki is contaminated by these people. Politicians and lawyers.
Patriots.
Privileged treatment. Media hide the truth. We have to save Kawasaki.
Media hiding the truth. Now that's something Americans and Japanese can get angry about together.
Okay.
I just don't agree. We are trying to understand other cultures very well compared to like previous generations.
Oh, come on. Shut up, woman.
The passion is insane. I want all of us to be peaceful. I know it is such a hard thing. Hopefully politicians can make it happen.
Fuck. Nah, dude. Jeez, that is fucking... Oh. Yeah, they're working on it over in Japan. They are chipping away at their resolve. They are chipping away, you know? I don't know how successful they'll be. Let's see, this is 3 years ago. That was 7 years ago. 1 year. Okay. Nobita. This is the guy I was talking about it seems like this guy's trying to push more tourism and diversity in Japan. I've watched this guy's channel a little bit.
What comes to your mind when you say this? I'm sure everyone has a different definition, but me personally, I would say like caring about own country a lot, much more than other countries. And it's like not accepting any foreign workers or immigrants and just shutting down any foreign influence. That's what I personally imagine from this term. Sorry if that's far away from your definition, but probably we can both agree on this. It has a lot of negative connotations nowadays. It's like a very bad thing in the society. Now, I'm not gonna argue if this is true or not. I'm gonna talk about Japan specifically.
Hell yeah, remember this? This was a great troll. So, yes, this was just like a lie. Like, what the fuck? All they do is lie. And this guy, obviously, Nobita, he's gonna show that lie.
Does my country really look like that? Right-wing nationalism is rising. More and more people don't go to election and don't even care about Japan, especially young people. More and more Japanese go study abroad, and probably they are more foreign influenced when they get back to Japan. Nowadays, we are opening the door more than ever, so the number of foreign residents
2.73 million foreign residents registered living in Japan in 2018. Ooh.
Is rising a lot, and now probably Japan doesn't even.
Holy shit, Japan, wake the fuck up. Well, I mean, they probably already know for the most part, but there probably is a rising sentiment because, I mean, you know, they are a somewhat Americanized culture, so they're gonna have a creeping influence of Western kind of bullshit, just like
Japanese are okay with that. Of course, I'm sure.
I mean, like privilege this and patriarchy that. I mean, I'm sure that's already making its way over there.
Japanese are not happy about that, but something xenophobic or racist is not acceptable as a country, not just toward foreigners, but toward a minority like LGBT community.
Cooks.
We are giving more and more support to foreign residents and the children as well. At least to me personally, seems like Japan is heading to the opposite direction. So when my American friend asked me about this video, I felt really weird because I don't see any rise of nationalism in Japan today. It's kind of opposite, but who knows? Maybe I'm completely wrong and missing many things. So let's see what they have to say.
While I was in Japan, I got my hands on a Japanese history textbook.
DM Laney, and one of the, at least a handful of the people holding signs in those right-wing demonstrations in Japan had the signs that say F Koreans and stuff, like, there is some anti-Chinese and anti-Korean sentiment, but it is probably, as you're right, it is primarily, you know, as you said, those groups. But yeah.
It's a very political one. And if you look inside, you'll see a version of history that is very different than the one the world knows. An example is the Nanking Massacre, the 1938 event in which Japanese troops murdered tens of thousands of Chinese.
Is Vox just, is what we're seeing, like Vox is just trying to push like Japanese guilt, like anti-Japanese rhetoric, just like they're trying to push anti-white and like white guilt.
Chinese civilians. To the world, this massacre is considered one of the most infamous war crimes committed by the Japanese during their takeover of Asia.
Yep,
In this textbook, it basically gets no attention. It's referred to as the Nanking Incident. And the only attention it gets in this book is basically disputing the facts. There's no mention of the hundreds of thousands of Korean women who were forcibly brought over to serve in brothels.
Dude, they have the internet. They can look it up if they want to. I mean, like, okay, maybe other, I don't know Japanese history myself. Maybe other facts are more pertinent. I don't know. Maybe someone in the chat can elucidate on
the
that.
front lines of the Japanese wars. These comfort women that are a huge part of Japanese history, but they don't show up in this book. This textbook publishing society is one of many expressions of a rising nationalism in Japan.
So they brought up this as a political history textbook. But can you guess how many schools in Japan are using the textbook actually? Yes, that's it. It's almost zero. Most Japanese students don't have the right-wing textbook. By the way, when it comes to history textbooks in Japan, it's generally just fact focus, and it doesn't.
Oh, okay, so it isn't. So the guy in the Vox video was wrong, actually. Nobita is here to say, like, no, there is no, like, ultra-nationalist, nativist propaganda in the textbooks. Is that what I'm understanding?
Generate any patriotic.
Far from being nationalistic, Japanese textbooks seem the least likely to stir patriotic passions.
Idea or passion. And yes, most history textbooks in Japan actually cover many controversial incidents like Nanking Massacre. To be fair, I think most Japanese students study that just for test. So I think they forget that right after the test. I'm sure most young people don't even remember what they studied in the history class. But my point still stands. It doesn't encourage us to become like right-wingers or nationalists. It's much more true in China.
And he has to, like, frame it as if that would be a bad thing. Like, you notice that? What's the deal with that? What the fuck?
Their textbooks are much more pushing their historical narratives.
This is Makoto Sakurai. He's the public face for the Japan First Party. Within the first 5 minutes of my interview with Sakurai, and even through a translator, I could tell that this guy would get along great with Donald Trump.
Or Salvini.
一番最後のですね、った時にものすごい人だかりで、フェイクニュースがもう横行してるんですよ。
When I saw that, I was like, who is this guy? Any of my Japanese friends or co-workers don't even recognize this person or the political party. I'm definitely.
Yeah, you're like younger dudes though, right? I mean, that factors in.
Most Japanese don't even know their.
And I think Japanese are largely apolitical, aren't they? You know, but they still would be like, well, what are all these gaijin fucking doing here? Like, at the very least, they would scowl at them silently, like for making too much noise on the subway. You know, because you have to keep quiet on the subway.
But not even 1% of the Japanese don't support that party.
Or light rail, whatever the fuck.
They have a quite bad reputation. Some of their members were arrested, including Sakurai. Their YouTube channel has been banned because it was too extreme.
Cooks.
Many people don't like their policies, even trying to discourage people from voting for them like this. You can't use that as an example of a rise of nationalism in Japan. That's like a super minority, actually.
Sakurai's Japan First Party hasn't won any elections yet, but other nationalists in Japan have, including Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in 2012. He has surrounded himself with advisors and ministers from some of these fringe groups who are now influencing policy.
So they are describing our Prime Minister as a nationalist. Yeah, he used to be. I feel like he's getting to liberal side more and more nowadays. And at least some Japanese also think like that, especially about immigration. He's definitely not
the rise of nationalists.
Typical conservative as you may imagine.
出入国管理法の改正案が成立しました。全国的な人手不足の中、優秀な外国人材の皆さんにもっと日本で活躍していただくためにこの制度は必要である。
You can't care about people without caring about the country they live in. The left always goes on about communities but not nations. What is the difference? See, well, I think like a nation is like it's people that have like a common goal, right? At the very least, and that can be broken down along a whole bunch of areas. I think that the fact that, again, like I said earlier, Japan is homogeneous, like mostly like 98%. You know, I mean that works in their favor. That's a big part of why they're orderly, clean, low crime. They do have flaws. I mean, they're like isolated on a fucking island, and so they have issues with depression and suicide. All that's been gone over. They have the ultra like Americanized culture, which probably factors into it. So it's like a little bit of ultra consumerism and just isolation, you know. But anyway.
特に地方において中小小規模事業者の皆さんが深刻な人手不足に直面しています。この現実に向き合わなければなりません。即戦力となる外国人材を受け入れ、日本経済を支える一員となっていただく。そのために日本人と同等の職場環境、賃金面での待遇はしっかりとしていきたいと 考えています。
Wage gap, dude? What the fuck? Dude, wage gap debunk in the chat, dude.
Also, for example, our current foreign minister,
2015 wage gap, dude.
Immigration law and advocating for accepting more foreign workers.
We are now looking
No.
forward to 2020 Tokyo Olympics, Paralympics. So hope more people come visit us, and we're trying to open the
Is this guy only Japanese?
country, and more people not just come visit,
Oi.
but to work in Japan with us. And we look forward to sort of real multicultural Japan. Tokyo Olympics is definitely the first step. After that, I think Japan is more friendlier to the foreigners.
And you're not worried about the Japanese culture becoming kind of watered down and changed with all these foreign...
Hey, Vay, what are you talking about? Like I'm saying, dude, is this... He looks like a cross between Ben Shapiro and, like, you know, a Japanese business dude or politician. And he's pushing, like, globalism, like, mass immigration into Japan. They're gonna ask him, like, he just asked him, you know, like, is this gonna dilute... Excuse me, is this gonna dilute the Japanese diaspora, or whatever you want to call it? I would say yeah, probably. But let's see what he's gonna say.
Well, ever since the time of early emperors, we had many people coming from China through Korean Peninsula, bringing in new culture like Buddhism, rice growing, you know, and some people.
Right, but you kept it chill, right? You kept it very chill.
Cairo. Some people came on the ship through the island, from the southern islands. Japanese culture is already mixed from the beginning, so it would be nice to add more layer on top of that.
No, because then you're gonna agitate for the collapse of your country so that you can cash in on just an ever increasingly atomized people who just do nothing but consume via like phone apps and engage with ads. Like,
Many people
fuck
think
that.
Japan is really conservative and
Still in contact with Nick? No, regrettably. Dude should get in contact with me and do a stream one of these days. That would be fun.
all the politicians are nationalists. It's not true anymore. Japan has been changing a lot, just like the West. And we are certainly influenced by some of the Western ideologies, like feminism, for example. It doesn't look like a right-wing nationalistic country.
Up until now, these guys, and yes, most of them are guys, have
oh my god,
been known for driving around in their decked-out vans, preaching the restoration of Japan's pre-World War II greatness.
Alpha, dude?
Their agenda is similar to nationalist movements in other countries. They want to restore a strong military, they call for the deportation of Koreans and a limitation to the little immigration that Japan even has.
First of all, this kind of right-wing propaganda.
Yeah, I don't think it is like a huge emphasis on Koreans as much. It might be, but and I saw a sign or two earlier, but I think it might be mostly emphasizing like Syrian sort of Syrian crises or whatever you have.
Propaganda tracks are not so often to see actually, and it's just so annoying to us. And those people often just get arrested. It's kind of seen as crazy social misfit people. Basically, it's not so acceptable in your society. As getting older, the number and influence has been getting down a lot. It's not really a part of Japan anymore. But why they show that and talking like that's an evidence of a rise of nationalism in Japan? Now at this point, you can see their tactic, right? They just pick a tiny part of Japan and make it look like the majority. That's just not how it works.
So he's like trying to disavow the right-wing influence. Why is he what's that term? Like a vegetable person? Oh man, what's that term that Japanese have? Basically, it's like their soy boy. You know what I mean? Like garden boy or garden man or something like that.
I'm not saying we
vegetable
don't have any
man.
right-wing nationalistic people. Of course, some people are like that, just like in any country. But here is my issue. When you say like this, many people probably assume that that's kind of social movement in Japan. And many Japanese people are subscribing to that, which is not true actually. If you are talking about individuals, I wouldn't say that's entirely wrong. But if you are talking about societal things, this kind of state...
I wonder if does he have to Nobita have to disavow Antifa as hard? Like the podcast we were just listening to, and we're going to get back to that podcast, by the way. But, geez, you know, this Overton window shift is going to gradually happen to Japan, too. This guy or guys and gals in Japan don't have to disavow Antifa faggots as much as they do a tiny little, you know, sliver of a far right, you know. Herbivore men, that's what it is. That's what it is. We can call them grass types, too. Grass type. Shout out to Pokemon.
In Tokyo, there's this huge controversial shrine called Yasukuni. It's where all the people who died in the wars under the emperor are memorialized, including all those who died in World War II. Over 1,000 of those war criminals are enshrined here and are prayed to every day. But a lot of Japanese people have a different narrative about what happened after the war.
Cox?
According to this narrative, the tribunals after World War II were not an impartial exercise of justice, but rather an emotional backlash against the atrocities that had just occurred during the war. So the fact that they're here in Yasukuni doesn't bug a lot of these people. In fact, they revere them and they worship them for their sacrifice to the emperor. All of the symbolism and memorials point to a glorification of the imperial period, not necessarily an apology for it.
Oh yeah, Hikikomori, yeah, those are loners. Or maybe it has some, like, crossover with otakus, probably. In America, definitely has that same thing, what we could describe as, like, the atomized, like, 20 or 30, you know, like, the loner 20 or 30-something. Maybe bugman would be another synonym for that, a bugman, right? Like a city-dwelling, sort of like you know, like, usually overweight, but not all the time, kind of dweeby looking, yeah, like a hikikomori or herbivore men, soy boy kind of thing. That's an American kind of thing, isn't it?
The shrine is at the symbolic.
But I mean, like, you know, that it's going to be global.
Heart of the nationalist narrative, censoring any mention of atrocities and glorifying the imperial age as worthy of restoration.
Actually, I partly agree with that. Those criminals during the World War II are enshrined and revered in that shrine. But it's not causing a right-wing nationalistic ideology in Japan. It's not affecting us like that. Remember, we instantly get backlash. And we are really under pressure from China and South Korea. It's definitely not so easy, especially for public people, including
Pokemon studio criticized after visiting controversial shrine.
Prime Minister
Japan's PM avoids Yasukuni.
to visit the Yasukuni shrine. It surely does bug those people, but I would say as far as our younger generation, most of them don't even go to the shrine, since they don't have any interest about the history. I really don't think the Yasukuni shrine is affecting their mindset in any way. Okay, having all that said, I want to clarify this. I'm not gonna say this entire organization and the YouTube channel sucks. I do not think so. I definitely enjoyed some of their contents and found them quite educational and informative with a lot of experts and scientific evidence. The quality is actually really high. That's definitely part of the reason they got a huge audience, right? However, I have to disagree with this video specifically as a Japanese person, and I'm kinda confused because there's the one often saying like this.
But you should be wary of how—
Oh, this fucking guy. If you got demonetized, Carlos Maza, this fucking rich fuck is definitely to blame.
you're reacting to a—
I mean, that's why I have to stream on dlive.tv/DurstTheWorst. Please join me over at dlive.tv/DurstTheWorst.
biased sample.
Way
One of the
better.
ways Tucker does this is by cherry picking.
Seriously.
Cherry
Who is
picking.
really cherry picking? Who is really using—
At least this dude's base enough to go after Vox for lying all the time, but at the same time, I wish he didn't have to disavow being, you know, like having a nationalist kind of bent in his country as much.
a biased sample, showing something totally not representing current Japan. Most Japanese actually don't agree or support. It's kinda disappointing, to be honest, because they are big organization having a lot of money and advertising like this. But actually, they are just in the same category like CNN.
We're trying to create news videos that are smarter than the crap you see on CNN.
I hate this motherfucker.
Really?
But making videos like this is expensive, and you can help us keep doing this work
This guy's like a definite billionaire with a yacht, by the way.
by clicking this link and joining the Vox Video Lab.
If it's so expensive to make a content like that, why not just stop it?
Pretty based ending. I mean, so yeah, I guess like an herbivore man in Japan is at least slightly less soy than an American like straight up soy boy. But yeah, where was I on that? Oh yeah, so yeah, this is the Japantifa. This is where I was.
How did anti-fascism evolve, and to bring us up to the current date, what are the battles it's fighting now? So to bring us all the way up to the immigration system or anything else you didn't talk about, could you discuss that change?
I think the how anti-fascism evolved is very much linked to the history of the Japanese left or radical left itself. We have this in this.
Dude, the Japanese radical left, like, from what I understand, gets like run through with samurai swords because they dishonor their nation and the very idea of order and harmony itself.
60s and 70s student protests, which were clearly anti-state and anti-emperor, who were talking of Japan as a post-fascist country, which is still rooted somehow in fascism, and were clearly calling to the abolishment not only of the emperor, but basically of capitalism and the Japanese state itself. I mean, of course, it was revolutionary anarchists and communists who said it. It was just
we don't want that over. We definitely don't want that over capitalism. We don't want revolutionary like IWW communism. Definitely not. I'm just like for real, dude.
Nothing less than the revolution, the world communist revolution. So
Frankfurt School globalists, yeah.
We have then another small factor which is also important, which is the fight of Japanese minority groups. There is the Burakumin, which is like basically, you can think of India.
Burakumin?
Yeah, where you have this case of the untouchables. Basically, you still have this case in Japan. Until the 80s, it was much more severe. So those people couldn't get jobs. They were basically at the fringe of society.
So this is where you talk about like the real destruction of Japan, dude. I mean, you already have like World Star Hip Hop-esque videos coming out of Japan now, dude. You already fucking have that, and this guy's sitting here agitating for more.
And those groups, they, not all of them, but a large portion of this movement, which consists like. There's like hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who belong to this caste in Japan. So they had their own groups who also fought very fierce, and also some of them said Japan is a racist, a fascist country because it's treating us like this. Then we have this long era of which I think some scholars, they say it's the invisible era, when in the 80s, like the students' movements died down, and we have this like the Japanese. Japan becomes basically one of the biggest economical nations of the world. We have this Japan INC. This term dates back to the 80s, and where also like the normal Japanese person becomes very, very wealthy, relatively. So, which basically, a lot of people who were leftists before, anti-fascist leftists before, I would say, they just like go with the flow. They become wealthy, and like, okay, we don't have a need anymore to protest or to go on the streets or to make demands. But still, there is, of course, there is a lot of movement going on, but just not that visible anymore on the streets and such. It's like very segregated. And then the other turning point, which is, I would say, the most important one, is Fukushima in 2011. I hope, 2011, the disaster of Fukushima. And after this, what happened is that Japan experienced its first like social uprising since decades, basically since the end of the 80s, the end of the 70s, and anti-nuclear protests start. And I'm talking like proper big mass protests of hundreds of thousands of people, like every week in Tokyo and in other cities. So it was a mass movement, and with
a perfect occasion to bust out the fire hose.
With the re-emergence of this anti-nuclear movement, which has had ideologically linked to the left, also what came up was also anti-racist groups. Like they were basically
anti-Japanese groups,
a product of
an
this
anti-white
nuclear movement. And why? Easily said, because like this anti-nuclear movement consisted largely, like the classical left didn't really play a big part anymore in this movement. It basically died out in the 70s and maybe 80s. Then strong radical left the Japanese ones have. So a lot of people went to protest for like the first time. And they weren't really political or leftist in a broader, like in a more narrow sense. And back then, what also happened is that racist groups, although they were rampant in Japan, but the first time they started to attack foreigners on the street. There were groups like the Zaitokukai, which is the group against the privileges.
Zaitokukai. So, I mean, this sounds like maybe the equivalent of Forza Nuova. They probably actually do really base things like help the poor and stuff, but then one lone wolf psycho snapped and did some bad shit.
The Korean minority, it's like abbreviated to Zaitokukai. And they started to march like real fascist demos, also with swastikas and stuff, through Tokyo's Koreatown, which is called Shinoku.
So we're always hunting for phantom white supremacists.
They attacked Korean residents and business owners. Also, like, they attacked them with fists and stuff. And so people who were involved in this anti-nuclear movement at that time saw that something is wrong. Like, they had this wake-up call. They saw what's happening in Japan. That, like,
look at this. How the hell? Why would a Japanese person ever become possessed enough to do this? I just don't understand the inclination. I mean, maybe this just goes to show like how hardcore or how effective internet brainwashing can really be.
Like what all the problems with just nuclear energy,
globally.
Corruption and what else. And they also saw that when they started to research racism, also is a problem in Japan. And those people who now march and attack Korean residents and who are here for hundreds of years in Japan. And so then the first groups emerged who actively tried to stop the fascist groups. So there was scuffles on the street, there was sit-ins on the streets, a lot of groups formed and stuff like that. So, and this went on for a month. And it was the first time that, like, in Japan there was something like a real, like, that fascists and anti-fascists faced each other on the street. So, like, we know it from the West, like some, like in the USA, the Ku Klux Klan tries to march, and hundreds of people just block the streets and shout at them and tell them you can't walk here. So this
nobody reps the KKK. Literally no one, and it's not the same thing. I guarantee you, it's not the same thing.
It was around 2013 when it started in Japan.
Turning now to the protests on 6/06 that were, I think, about this Kurdish man who had experienced
herbivore man,
or what
grass type.
Most people would say improper practice at a minimum from Japan's police, Tokyo's police. These protests did talk about that on the 6th of June, but they also were more explicitly focused on Black Lives Matter. And I'm wondering, for people who might be wondering, beyond just sort of global solidarity, and maybe that was the most powerful emotion, but what anti-Black racism would people be protesting within Japan? So a figure like Naomi Osaka, who's talked about this.
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. Like, what the fuck? Like I said before, what would possess this dude to give two shits about, like, a Black American gangbanger type who attacks a cop and gets dealt with? I don't understand. I mean, from what I've seen, I mean, again, you can find like world star hip hop style videos in Japan now, dude. Like, let me just put it to you that way. to use a euphemism and not get banned, you can find that now.
Just a little bit, being the most famous example
You can find Blake excellence in Japan now. Let's just put it that way.
would come to mind. But what are some of the links that might be obvious and not so obvious for Black Lives Matter in a Kansai and Tokyo and the Black Lives Matter movement of the United States?
From the organizer side, I mean, being black in Japan, it's like you have this hierarchy of foreigners. Being white is always like you get the good treatment.
Right, because they understand order, you know? I mean, like, the Eurasian invasion, you know, as B&B the other day was talking about, I mean, that's one of the systems that people kind of just prefer, isn't it? Either European or Asian, because they kind of understand that those peoples are going to understand order, and they're not going to be just wantonly destructive, and they're not going to push for things like reparations or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean?
Being Asian foreigner, you're like pretty much on the
and they're not going to snap on people like just for no reason. They're not going to snap on people.
Being white means
0 to 100.
This racial or discriminatory hierarchy. Being black, you are definitely on the low end. So what it means is like it's even harder for you to get a job. It's even harder for you to get an apartment. People will point at you and say you are kawaii, you are scary. There is several, like countless instances of Japanese TV show where actors appear with blackface and so on. So
wait, I want to find an instance of that sort of in a favorite game of mine. Let's see. Anybody play this Fatal Fury game? Yeah. Garo. Come on, let's get out of here. Oh! Look at this. Is that what he's talking about, kinda?
Of course, you will get controlled by the police much more often than if you would if you're white or Asian looking. So that's one of the problems. What you don't have in Japan is like this in your face racism, which is maybe in the West, you know, like violent attacks also by the police.
No, it's overwhelmingly bleak on hate, and it's police. I mean, like, unjustified police violence is actually pretty rare if you look into the video footage.
In the middle of the street, you have it to some extent, but it's very, very low.
Or at the very least, I want to scratch that by saying, like, racial. Like, you could actually say that it's this is racism. Like, that's non-existent, dude.
And which is also makes like this apologists of the Japanese system say, yeah, you see, there is no discrimination in the country, but it's not. Of course, there is discrimination. Just because it's not so visible, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And there is like, you have this on the Japan blog. It's like what was Blackened Eye, I think. And it's like it was a long-running series.
So it's like it's ever present and omnipresent, omnipotent or whatever, but you just can't see it. I hate that. These people are such charlatan pieces of shit.
I think of a black president of Japan where he talked about what it feels to be black and how he's also being discriminated in Japan as a black person. And I think that's a very big problem. Also at the protests now, how to tell this to a more general Japanese public. Why? a lot of Japanese people, like, first of all, Japan is a very homogeneous state.
Yep.
It has like 98% of the people there are ethically Japanese. So
same, yep.
Most foreigners live in bigger cities, and most of them in Tokyo or in Osaka, which are mega cities. But so the majority of people never interacted with a black person or even a foreigner, I would say.
And why do they? So, like, why is that required of them?
Except for maybe.
I wish I could obviously be there to ask this question.
At the food
That's sort of the
stand
framing, right?
When you order food and there is this Chinese guy or something working there, né? So and a lot of people in Japan, since they're the majority and they're not many foreigners, they just don't know the concept of what discrimination means. So it's a country where it's
because it's like fake and gay, just like racism or sexism or anything with phobia or ism or ist. It's like all fake.
It's normal to show blackface on TV. So, and for the most Japanese, racism and discrimination exists somewhere else, you know, in America or whatever. So, and that's one of the main problems here also with the demos, how to convey to a broader public that
they know that racism is between, like, basically, like, among blacks, whites, and Jewish people. Like, that's and you know, like, those are the three groups duking it out right now, it would appear. Like, it's one group accusing, you know, it's like, hey, your life sucks, these white people, they're to blame, you know? Like, that's kind of what's going on.
Of course, discrimination and racism exists in Japan too. And of course, everyone is part of this. And it's not something from some foreign country. It's not some concept which doesn't exist. So I think that's one of the most severe.
If they outlawed soy and closed all the Mickey D's worldwide, would all of this go away in a week or two? Yeah, you're not wrong. One has to wonder, yeah. If, yeah.
Problems right now is the protests, and I think that's also one of the good things that people now at the protest in Osaka and Kyoto, although they were kind of small with 500 and around 1,000 people saw that foreigners do have a voice, and especially also black foreigners do have a voice. They are not just some English teachers who come here and you can make blackface jokes about them, but it's people with a voice and with a who have something to say. I think that's a very important point of this protest.
And for Japan's organizers, what messages did they use in Japanese? You know, we would hear chants in English, so one that you hear when you watch the videos is "No justice, no peace, fuck the police." That was one in English. And I know there were a myriad of chants, but what would be some of the chants or slogans that, if you feel comfortable doing some simultaneous translation, that were being said in Japanese to try to convey some of these concepts of opposing racism, opposing police violence in a way that would resonate with a Japanese audience?
I mean, since the anti-racist movement in Japan is like very old and also alive and kicking, Sabetsu wa yurusanai, which is like, there is no way I would let discrimination be. This would be one of the slogans. Jinken no mamore, which is like a long-standing, all-time classic on Japanese demonstrations, like protect human rights. What else? On this particular demonstration, it was in Japanese, they said like, not fire racist police. It was like slogans like this, which did resonate with Japanese racist tokaere, like racists go home. It's like, this is slogans which do exist for years and years now on Japanese demonstrations. Now when we're talking, it's English slogans for the first time. It's not for the first time, of course. There was like ACAB was chanted even on demos before, But of course, now it was like.
Do you think this guy is like 100% Japanese himself?
The first time, at least, I saw that the crowd was so international. There was also a lot of only English-speaking people who really couldn't speak Japanese for whatever reason, and so they just like decided to chant in their own language, which is not a bad thing per se, I think.
It's just useful to think about how different phrases occur in different contexts, and on Chinese Twitter, they're trying to figure out like how to translate Black Lives Matter.
I mean, in Japan, the discussion also was here, and basically what it just came to, it boiled down to like, 黒人の命を大切にしろ or は大切だ exactly, which basically means Black Lives Matters, and which is a pretty neat translation because it conveys the meaning very well, I would say. And so here
we can't go home because you invaded our countries. That's the entire point. We want to go home and be left alone. Yeah, pretty based. You're not wrong.
This was like for the slogan itself, it was easy to translate. It had this flow, you know, like it rang a bell and stuff. Just the thing is that like most Japanese, since it's by the media, it's like by mass media, all the Black Lives Matter and even racism as such is presented as as something far away and not existing in Japan. Of course, like most people, when they hear it, they were like, what? Like, why do you even come up with this? No?
Okay, so there's still a lot of hope for Japan. So while Nobita, the other guy, he might be correct in saying that Japan's not explicitly like ultra-nationalist all the time. I mean, there is a movement, but the average everyday, you know, citizen in Japan is going to be like, what, BLM? Why do you want me to care about this? This is, why would I care about some criminal Blake who attacks a police officer with a knife after violating his restraining order because he raped a woman? Talking about Jacob Blake, for instance. Like, why on earth would I care about that?
So I think that's, like I said before, that's the point, like that you have to go more into deep to explain what is Black Lives Matter, what does it mean to be black and stuff. And this is happening, like there is in the... It
means they want Gibbs and they can't get their Gibbs, so they gon', you know, bust some shit, you know what I'm saying? You heard?
Black Lives Matter groups. There's a lot of translation being done now for flyers and so on, just to be able to pass it to the public, these flyers, to pass it over and to say, read this, and so you can understand it. There is also other stuff, like there is no hip hop. A few days ago there was a like famous hip hop club, I think, or a label, I'm not quite sure. They had like this online discussion based, which was aimed at the Japanese public, like usually Japanese hip hop fans, and hip hop is like per se, it's like comes from black culture in America, so, and they had like this artist, black artist speaking.
Did an entire stream talking about once how I just kind of resent that was even a factor in my upbringing at all, or just in my American experience growing up, is that there was like bleak music, like bleak hip-hop music being shoved down my throat pretty much everywhere.
Like about some of them living in Japan, others in America, but with connections to Japan, and speaking about explaining what it means to, like, explaining racism to a public which basically never knew what this means. It was also translated simultaneously in Japanese. And there is like this black Japanese hip-hopper, I forgot her name now, but she's rapping in Japanese. It's a native language, but I mean, she's black Japanese, and she has all these anti-racist songs, and you know, like it's means of conveying what it means, like what anti-black racism as such means. So it's a starting point, I would say.
That's so a lot of people would say in the United States, at least, or in the UK and also in Europe, where there's been a resurgence of far-right parties, that this encourages a lot of people to be more openly racist, even to the point of violence or murder, where in the
No, that's y'all. Like, once again, 100% projection.
U.S. prior to the police murder of George Floyd.
No. The self-inflicted fentanyl and crack overdose of one fentanyl home-invading, gun-pointing at pregnant stomach of woman, Floyd.
White supremacists murdered a man in Georgia who was just jogging.
Wait. Joggers, dude? Joggers? Can I get an F in chat for joggers?
Because he was black.
No, he was casing joints.
I know in Japan there is a history of sort of far-right gangs being more and more confrontational. And for people who don't know a lot about Abe, could you just give your own opinion or scholarly position on if Abe, in order to fire up his base or for his own sort of fairly conservative politics, if he's given a lot of support for sort of ethno-supremacy in Japan, like a Donald Trump?
Which we all know, like, ethno-supremacy, like Donald Trump was not anywhere near that. He increased the amount of H-1B visas. No, definitely not. And he did a lot of favors for foreign nations. I mean, that's what the whole COVID fucking bill was about. So it's just lies. Like, tons of the people in his family are Jewish or like non-white. It's bullshit.
I would start with Abe and say that calling Abe a conservative is an understatement by far. Abe comes from the most far right wing of the Liberal Democratic Party, which by itself was from the beginning a party founded by war criminals in Japan, by war profiteers. And from the beginning, their idea was to re-establish, to get rid of the constitution, which was installed by the Americans after 1945, the Japanese constitution, which they see as non-Japanese. So what they're trying for decades is, of course, to get rid of this.
I mean, it's Americanized, right? You know,
this constitution, and just to say, to put it with some Abe's, some guys of Abe's party, to make a Nihon Rashi constitution, which makes a truly Japanese, a typical Japanese constitution. So what they mean with this is basically, you can read this, it's basically out in the open. They're openly calling for there is a very hardcore anti-feminist momentum in their ideas.
Based 2015.
They're
Gamergate.
Openly calling for
women suck. JK.
Parts of the constitution to make it like the pre-1945 constitution, and Abe himself comes from exactly those movements. Abe was in the 80s and 90s a long time author, for example, for the magazine Seiron, which is a far right, the ultra right.
I wish I knew how to spell that.
In Japan,
Seiron,
with very close ties to the ruling party, to the LDP. So Abe basically worked his way up through different, very, very far right circles up to the top of his party, which is nothing new. I mean, even his predecessors, like Nakasone, which was in the 80s the premier of Japan, or Taro Aso, those guys were openly embraced. They were openly racist. Nakasone said, what was...
Wait, Salon? He did not just... Did he classify... He must have been talking about something different.
Was it
no way.
Japan doesn't need black people because they're stupider than whites, so we only need white people. Openly just to put it short, he said like Hitler was a pretty good, cool guy. Like we should.
Hold on. Yeah. Hitler was a pretty cool guy. He's a sound Indian.
Hitler was a sensitive man. Hitler was a sensitive man. Hitler was a sensitive man. Hitler was a sensitive man.
Yeah.
In order to push our idea of the constitution through, we should orient ourselves on the NSDAP, on the Nazi party in Germany, because that's how they came to power. So it's not like that Abe is a conservative. He's like a flat-out racist. He's a flat-out right-wing extremist.
Racist?
It's like what's being overlooked by media in the West a lot, because with media in the West sees, oh, that's the guy who jumped out of whatever it was in a Super Mario costume at the end of the Rio Olympics. You know, that's how he's portrayed in the West.
Wait a minute. What the Abe Super Mario costume? Maybe I can find that. Maybe I can find that. Do 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 do.
The Games 2006. Well,
wait, what the fuck?
That day, during the year in the Super Mario to Tokyo, apparently was keen on highlighting the Maracana Stadium, saying,
Okay, that's it. That's pretty much it. Hitler was a sensitive man.
But it's not.
Abe was a sensitive man.
Like he has this long history of being like racist and far-right extremist, and it's like the whole Japanese establishment is like organized in this it's called Nippon Kaigi, which is called Japan Conference, which is an ultra-nationalist revisionist think tank, which Abe is a part of. Like he's a high-ranked member, and so are all his ministers, and so is the mayor of Tokyo, who 10 years ago gave a speech in front of an ultra-nationalist, openly racist, Holocaust-denying group. I mean, it's not like this is hidden or something. It's like out in the open, and that's how they make politics. I think that's the problem.
So then how would that connect to supporters?
And like this rise of, like what you were referring before was like these gangs, which is pretty much, which in the West is quite known, these like militant gangs, some of them with strong links to the Yakuza, to the Japanese mafia, which is per se a mafia with a very fascist right-wing ideology. Yes, you have.
Didn't fascists? I mean, well, at least Mussolini, I know, deported the mob. But I mean, this dynamic could be different. I mean, we are talking about
these gangs,
different times and different. Yeah.
But especially
we are talking about ostensibly the same ideology. So
in the last years, what appeared is like this new, like alt-right kind of groups who don't march, you know, like these old groups, like these gang groups has done, is like with uniforms and beating up people and stuff. They're much more like, you know, like they're media pros. They're not as laughable as those gangs with their fantasy uniforms, like and stuff.
Optics.
And which is more important, they have very close ties to Abe's party. Maybe not like.
He's talking about optics.
Directly not, but you just have to like see, like a good example would be like Sugita Mio, which is a lawmaker of the LDP, and she's like you just have to like check her schedule, and like she gives speeches at I don't know how many events organized by these alt-right groups. So, and these are also those groups who have been attacking Koreans, for example, physically on the streets. By now, the situation is not like that. Those groups would attempt to grab arms like in America and like, march street and beat up people. It's two reasons. One reason is it's very hard to get hold of arms in Japan, and also the political culture is a bit different of America. So there is less of these violent confrontations.
So maybe the Antifa of Japan are more orderly. I mean, look at them. Like, they're not wearing those creepy masks. They're not burning shit. I mean, give it time, but that is worth pointing out. At least in I don't know, one picture. But who knows?
But which I think is more important is, I mean, those groups are in power now. So, I mean, they have those people in power now in Japan are directly linked to these groups. I mean, there is not much between them. Ideologically, absolutely not. So why would they march now?
It's how you say racist and soy. You also have to add the up talk, like with it.
Violently. They have no reason. I mean, Abe is doing their work for them anyway. What happens is, of course, that they have a pretty, they have it pretty easy with state repression, and they are not being prosecuted. There is not much, they're not being prosecuted by the state or something, not in a way you would expect it, like it should be. They're, just for one example, like 4 years ago, I think, the first Japanese hate speech law came into effect in Japan, and this was a it came directly because of this anti-racist protest, so it became a topic worldwide, and everyone was looking to Japan. Well, you don't have a hate speech law, what about now? So they made this hate speech law, and
the dude sounds like a mixture of Dinesh D'Souza and a Japanese dude.
Western media was like, oh cool, there is a hate speech law, but actually no one read what this hate speech law is.
So he supports hate speech law, but
it's a non-existing law. It's a law without punishment. So you can break this law, you will not get any fine. And I mean,
so the Antifa is lamenting the fact that there's a hate speech law in Japan that doesn't sufficiently fine, imprison, or punish so-called racists for the crime of being racist.
That's how it works in Japan.
Which is not a real term.
A lot of times.
It's not real.
Just like they do something to appease people from outside who most of the times can't speak Japanese or read Japanese. And in reality, nothing much changes. And Japan right now is heading in a political direction which openly favors these alt-right groups. So I don't think they really have reasons right now to march.
So yeah, I mean, the Nobita guy that we were just watching disagrees with that sentiment. I think that, like we were saying, I mean, Japan is 98% actually Japanese, so it's gonna appear that way to a soy, like a shitlib, right? Like to a shitlib, a place like Japan, like every person is gonna appear like a fascist,
This year there is since the 70s there has been a memorial service for those people, mostly Korean people, who were killed by a racist massacre, a pogrom. There was thousands of them from fascist Japanese mobs, and so this occurred in 1923 and since the 70s there is a memorial service for this massacre, in which, like, very anti-fascist, anti-racist. He said it should never happen again.
Very beta, very soy, very
Massacre was the
child
reason.
molesty.
The reason of this massacre was racism. And this year, the Tokyo governor, Yuriko Koike, she basically banned this memorial service. And you may think, what? Why? So the reason is because since 3 years, a fascist group which openly denies the Holocaust started to protest.
So yeah, he wants to make that a crime. You can hear it. I mean, like he said previously, there's a fake hate speech law that doesn't sufficiently fine people, and he's like, wow.
This.
He's mentioned Holocaust now like 4 or 5 times in this podcast as well. So
memorial service for
like,
the
who
killed
gives
Koreans.
a shit?
And now the mayor of Tokyo, the governor, Yuriko Koike, said we don't want troubles here, so she just banned both like the demonstration of the racists and the memorial service, which of course is in favor for the racists. And now is the kicker. I told you before that Yuriko Koike held a speech at a Holocaust denying groups meeting. And
Number
that's
6
exactly the group
Gorillion
we are talking
mentioning.
about. So basically what she did is she listened to a Holocaust denying ultra racist group to the demand of this group that this memorial service should be banned, and here we are.
Every time a leftist says waitheth, just respond with wah or meow. That's all you got to say.
Of course, Koike is also part of this Japan conference of this Nippon Kaigi. At least she was until a few years ago a high-ranking member of this far-right extremist think tank. So that's how it is in Japan. You just have to basically make small demands on the street. There's a small ultra-nationalist group, and the chance that you will get your...
Yeah, this is the radical sort of like Saul Alinsky tactic where they lie and act as if like super radical demands and lies and propaganda are actually just like small little like demands, like we're just asking for humanity, but they're lying and they're asking for like a shit ton so that they end up with, so that, you know, when they inevitably end up with way less, you know what I mean? It's incrementalism sort of thing.
Your demands granted is
typical radical
like
shit.
You see, very big.
So in a Japan where it looks electorally, and it has for a long time, that there's not really good electoral solutions for some of these problems. How does Antifa organize, and I know it's not one group, so I'm referring to it as a homogenous, horizontalist series of organizers.
Listen, dude, Biden is on board with saying and repeating that bullshit. So is Don Lemon, okay? They're being funded by the same fucking elites.
And organizations.
Lies.
But all these far-right groups have huge advantages. It doesn't really seem like electoral solutions work, even if you do get sort of a centrist in power. I don't really think, at least for the U.S., if you get a Joe Biden in there, I think there's going to be a lot of these same structural issues. Black Lives Matter famously happened under Obama. So what is the philosophy then of these groups of, okay, we know probably electorally we don't really have a way out of combating some of these racist tendencies of police brutality, of ultranationalism. So how does their philosophy shaped by the sort of limits of electoralism, and what advice or strategy might that offer for other states or nations that have this same problem?
Well, electorally, it's like in the short run, maybe it's there is not so much to gain, but like large parts of the Antifa movement in Japan are now also part of the anti-Abe movement, and like anti-Shinzo Abe. So there's a lot of demonstrations, also bigger ones, like there was 1 or 2 years ago, one with 50,000 people against Abe. And so, of course, which is like what they're always telling is to politicize people, to tell them to go vote. because the voter turnaround in Japan is horrifically low. It's like around 50%, and even much lower in the younger generation. I think like between 20 and 35, only 30 or even less, 30% or even less people, the young Japanese go to vote, which of course benefits Abe. So
right. So I mean, this is like the white silence equals violence bullshit ideology. It's like he's characterizing Japan as like having an ultra nationalist, ultra right wing bent because most of the people don't vote, or most of the youth don't vote, and also like most of them are gonna look at like, again, like criminal Blakes in America getting shot by police officers and throw up their hands and shrug and be like, why do you want me to care about this, like, at all? Like,
there is this fight for like go vote, don't waste your vote and stuff, which is of course they're countered by some go vote campaigns by the government, by Abe's party and stuff. But this is one thing. The one bigger thing would, of course, be the fight for a new hate speech law, which is happening while we are speaking.
Gata.
There is...
Wow, so they're telling you right on their podcast that they're fighting for hate speech legislation. So that's coming probably if Biden croaks. Yeah. The Harris administration might actually push for that.
In several cities in Japan, there are small city council committees which are fighting for local hate speech laws, and which in like there was even an very this year last year, sorry, in Kawasaki, which is next to Tokyo, this case, where a local hate speech law came into effect. After a long fight of the local activists, and which actually a man was fined there for, I think, in dollars would be like $5,000 US dollars. He got a fine for hate speech conduct. No? So and there is similar groups fighting in the
fighting. So he views this as like the good. These guys view that as like the good fight for you to get $5,000 for a hate speech fine. $5,000 fucking dollars, dude. This is what they're pushing
in several cities
globally.
In Japan to and the goal is like, of course, if we can have more local laws, hate speech laws, then maybe it can grow to a more bigger one, you know. So which would greatly, I think, greatly benefit the political culture in Japan, but because basically you can. You can, and that's what's being.
It's like you're allowed to hate people that are invading your country, and we can't have that now, can we?
Done on the street.
We can't hate what's evil and love what's good now, can we?
By fascist groups, you can advocate and call for the murder of minorities, and you get away with it, you know. And
yeah, right.
Which of course poisons the whole political culture here now. So I think
no, it's probably just like we don't want immigration from minority groups or like predominantly like third world countries.
This is like definitely one of the main goals of the Antifa movement now in a legal way. How to protect basically also people, not also as much as minority people as minorities, as much as also like Japanese who would oppose these nationalist policies. And another thing is, of course, which is done by the Antifa movement, is repoliticization of musical subcultures in Japan. So like
this is exactly what I was talking about in multiple streams of mine. The right or the non-left, whatever you want to call it, just people with an anti-progressive bent really need to start starting up bands, okay? And I know the lockdowns are bullshit, and of course, like live music, that's a dicey proposition right now. But we have live stream technology. Bands could very well start up on DLive, YouTube, whatever. They could live stream their practices, or I mean, that's already been done. Listen to these guys. We should do the same thing, dude. The right and the not, well, everyone, like. Basically, as the guy Don the Pleb would say, everyone to the right of Mao needs to start making more art, more music, starting bands, starting communities, like non-leftist, non-feminist, non-Antifa communities. Like, I think that's hugely important.
There was like this in the 80s and 90s. There was very, very few like political artists, like some punk artists. Punk is mostly right-wing in Japan, but you had some left-wing or anti-fascist ones. And now it's getting more and more because anti-fascist activists organize these concerts, clubbings, and so on and so forth, where mostly young people attend, which is also, I think, very, very important.
I'm aware of like a couple Japanese punk bands. Hold on, let's see. What were they called? Gleam Garden. That's what they're called. Band. This might be the play. Damn it. Kind of shitty quality, but whatever. So it's like whatever. Like this guy, this singer, like he's not explicitly the poor immigrants. Maybe so that's why this wanker views this band as right wing.
To raise awareness, and
it was kind of bad quality, but yeah, you get the idea.
Which show how it can be done. What it means for other countries, I think. That's very hard to tell because anti-fascists in Japan work from a very, very defensive position, and a lot of stuff which is being done here, like, is very basic if you compare it to especially some Western countries, like explaining what is racism. It's like that's part of the everything.
It's the native population opposing any sort of invasion from an out group or a hostile foreign tribe that has issues that make them not as compatible with the majority population. It's basically just a gaslighting term to prevent people who rightfully see an invasion from seeing it and combating it. That's what it is.
The discourse of more diverse societies, mostly. So, which I don't want to say that like most Western countries are anti-racist utopia, far from it, but still there is very big discrepancies.
There's much work to be done. We got gay marriage passed, and now we need drag queen story time. Oh, well, we got the 1965 Immigration Act done. Now, well, we need just full rampant riots in the streets, and we need to turn the other way because, well, punishing them would be racist or something.
What is being done? So,
George Floyd is awesome.
Can't really say that there is much what can be applied
yeah.
from Japan, what can be learned from Japan, because as much as I see it is that a lot of Japanese activists are learning from other countries. It's more the other way around.
And I'm just wondering, because I have a translator here, would there be one phrase to conclude this interview that you think really articulates a lot of the beauty or power or just a fascinating insight that you've seen in Japan that you haven't seen anywhere else in some of these topics we've discussed today?
Just like when I would have to choose one word for, and this will probably also be the name of my book, it's kaere. Kaere means, literally translated would be like go home, but more juicy translation is fuck off. Why I think this word is very important is because it's talking like this in Japan is like very is not the norm. In Japan, it's people are raised to talk not directly. They're raised to talk much too polite and blah blah, which is of course nothing natural to the Japanese. It's something which is being propagated and like reproduced by a far-right government for decades now. So like not to show their anger, and I think this word
too polite, yeah, whatever, you fucking hippie. I mean, I'll there you go. There's your impoliteness. But anyway, nah, there's your impoliteness right there. Yeah, I've been going for a decent amount of time. Please upvote the stream if you enjoyed it and share it out, or also give that donation button some love. But let's see. Let's jam this. one final thing I wanted to mention before I play all out here. I'm going to be covering the live streams of DC on the 6th. Pretty much all day. I'm just going to be live streaming all day, starting at like 10 a.m. on the 6th for the DC debacle. So look out for that. But yeah, until then, I'll probably be live at least once or twice more between now and then. But I'll play out with this one. Please give me give that donation link some love. Give me some lemons, some ice cream, whatever. It'd be greatly appreciated, and it will help me bring you more of this delicious content. Thank you very much.
A to Z.